What happens when the country hosting the world's biggest sporting event starts making it harder for parts of the world to actually take part? Because that's the uncomfortable question hanging over the 2026 World Cup right now. Before we go any further, let me know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy political analysis that goes beyond the headlines, make sure to like this video and subscribe to The Political Society. For decades, the World Cup has been marketed as a global celebration, a tournament that brings together different cultures, different nations, and millions of fans under one shared passion. But now, a growing number of questions are being asked about whether the politics surrounding this tournament are becoming just as important as the football itself. And if that's true, what does it mean for an event that was supposed to unite the world, rather than divide it?
When you think of what the word host means and what the word hospitality means, I'm going to ask you this question. Is America shaping up to be the worst host ever for the World Cup? Because it's already banning fans, banning players, and now it's banned a referee from Somalia who had the right to play there. But for their own reasons, America is saying he's not fit to be allowed into the country. Well, the New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani was joined by FIFA President Gianni Infantino yesterday to discuss preparations for the FIFA World Cup 2026.
The World Cup is supposed to be a celebration of the world as a whole, and some of the decisions that we've seen been taken by the federal administration, be it the denial of visas for journalists from certain countries or the rejection of a visa for a coach of a team, as well as single-day visas for specific foreign national teams. This is anathema to what this tournament is supposed to be about. If we cannot even allow the players, the teams, and the journalists covering those teams to come into this city in this country, then it begs a larger question about our commitment to the spirit of this tournament. And we want this to be a tournament that reflects our commitment to us being part of something larger than ourselves, and that's the world's game, which everyone should be able to be a part of.
Well, the footballing legend Ian Wright also added his thoughts on particularly the Somali referee Omar Artan being banned. He had this to say on his...
The real issue here isn't football. It's what happens when a country's national security priorities collide with its responsibilities as the host of a global event. Governments have the right to control their borders. Almost nobody disputes that. But hosting a World Cup is different. The moment a country accepts that responsibility, it is no longer acting solely on behalf of its own citizens. It's acting as a temporary gateway for the entire world. That's why these disputes matter so much. The controversy isn't simply about individual visa decisions. It's about whether international sporting events can remain truly global when access itself becomes part of a political debate. And if this is already becoming an issue before the tournament has properly begun, what happens when millions of fans start arriving?
The Somalian referee. The Somalian referee has been denied entry. Every few hours, it's another story. Another story about fans denied, players denied, officials denied, journalists denied. Now refs. You know something, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. It's actually not funny. Something has to be said. It's expensive tickets, the most expensive tickets ever. Expensive accommodation, transport through the roof. It has to be said. You know, is this how the hosts behave, really, for the greatest game, the greatest tournament in the world? Is this how the hosts behave? Are we not hearing more? Are we seeing how Qatar got dragged? Are we not hearing more? Is this the spirit of football? Really? You know who I feel for? I feel for the American fans who are desperate for this. American soccer fans who are desperate for this. How embarrassed they must be. How embarrassing for them this must be. This is, you know what? This is the World Cup. This is a World Cup of chaos. Whoever wins this World Cup is going to have to go through some serious chaos to get this done. I hope we can do it. But something has to be said, man. This is just like... This is the World Cup.
And let's not forget the expense as well that people go to, ordinary fans go to get to these tournaments. The real love of football, if you pay to travel and to pay for those massively expensive tickets and then your accommodation as well. I mean, that is a commitment to the game for sure. Miguel Delaney joins me, chief football writer at The Independent, author of State of Play, who's in New York for the World Cup. I think it starts Thursday, is that right, Miguel?
It starts on Thursday, yeah. Thursday. Although we might have to kind of a main event before that, because Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, is going to have to give his equivalent of the I Feel press conference from Qatar 2022 on Wednesday afternoon. Well, on Wednesday afternoon, Mexico City time, it'll be about 6:30 or so in the UK, maybe a little bit later actually, where he's obviously, if he deigns to take questions on it, he will, or from critical journalists, he will face questions on all of this and many other issues. And I have to say, the visa issue, I think, is, I've just written a piece on this for The Independent. It is a very telling controversy about where this 2026 World Cup is, what it's becoming, and also the relationship with the main host, USA, and specifically the Trump administration.
You mentioned Qatar, and I kind of half tongue-in-cheek am asking the question, is America the worst host ever for the World Cup? Because there have been problems with other nations as well. There was a lot of controversy around Qatar, wasn't there? Hosting it at all,
yeah.
A record on human rights and workers and the like, and homophobic attitudes, the same with Russia as well. But the tournaments went ahead and they were great, and they, it happened and it was celebratory. But go on, feel free. Come in.
The one thing I would say about that, because I have to say this discussion has aggravated me slightly, especially someone who's written a lot on all these tournaments. The USA, this has a lot of its own very grave, disparate problems. Above all, the precedent, like the lamentable precedent of a host nation actually bombing a participating country, something the World Cup has never seen before. But the big difference with Qatar, and I think people shouldn't lose perspective on this, because Qatar needed to build an entire structure to actually host that World Cup, and that structure was only ever going to be built by a migrant labour system that has been criticised by human rights groups and labourers themselves as slave labour. I mean, the very staging of that World Cup directly contributed to human suffering, which you can't quite say in the same direct way as here, but it doesn't need to be the same as Qatar or worse or better than Qatar to have its own issues.
Yeah,
and it does have its own many disparate, grave problems.
Would you say there's enough evidence so far that we're starting to see the sort of heavy hand of white supremacy on this?
Well, look, I mean, whatever term you want to use about it. I mean, so it's funny because I was just thinking there when you mentioned at the top of the segment about kind of the word host, and that's obviously a very valid context. But there's a more specific legal and technical context, which is when a World Cup is awarded, and obviously countries really vie for this because of what it is as a global party. There are all sorts of contractual provisions about how a tournament basically has to give certain guarantees, literal guarantees of the terms used, about freedom of movement for participating nations, about kind of entry and all this sort of thing. And FIFA evidently has, and this despite Infantino's very craven relationship with Donald Trump, hasn't been able to secure those guarantees. And there's obviously an extra dimension to this because all of this has been flagged. I mean, you mentioned the kind of about white supremacy there. Well, I mean, it's not a coincidence. All of the countries or all of the individuals that have faced issues so far have been from Muslim countries. And of course, this is on the back of one of Trump's executive orders was colloquially referred to as the Muslim ban. So, I mean, in all these times he was at Trump's inauguration, all these Trump events, what exactly was Infantino doing? And there is an extra dimension to this. I mean, above anything, beyond what the World Cup is supposed to represent and how inclusive it's supposed to be, Infantino isn't sure this World Cup is singularly anchored to him. And this comes at a moment, I wrote this for The Independent today, I've been told by multiple sources, impressions have been made upon national associations, including the Football Association, to make letters of endorsement for Infantino for another term. And that's before this World Cup has even concluded, a World Cup that now comes fraught with complications, could well expose FIFA, and has all sorts of potential issues like this. And I mean, the other dynamic, apart from the kind of the moral issue, think about how certain countries have been treated, it could actually affect the course of the tournament itself. Because, I mean, Iran, who could play the USA in the last 16, well, they're obviously at a disadvantage if a lot of their staff can't travel with the players at what is an emotionally testing time for this squad. They're at a disadvantage if they have to travel to the USA in the days of games. Senegal, who have been talked up as potential kind of really strong outsiders, they're also at a disadvantage if they're subjected to, like Uzbekistan, subjected to a humiliating tarmac security search.
And am I right in saying that Iranian fans are being denied the right to actually buy many tickets?
So the story that's come out, and there's a little bit of confusion about this, but about a little bit of confusion about where the decision has actually come from. But yes, the one allocation has been revoked. And again, because that's the thing, all of these player issues and the issue with the referee, Artem as well. I mean, they come before scores of fans get here. And like I know this sounds a little bit kind of almost glib, and not glib, but almost a bit trivial. But it's not. Like, a World Cup is supposed to be about why you host, why it's so good. It's people coming together. And like, for all the obvious issues with Russia that was held in the police state, I mean, it was more welcoming than the USA. And I have to say, one of the great memories I had of Russia, regardless of what happened since, and even they'd already invaded the Crimea by 2018, that shouldn't be forgotten. But I remember walking down Nikolskaya Street in Moscow, and I must have counted at least kind of 80 shirts of different national teams, and like that is the good of the World Cup.
And it's really interesting. You talk there about your sense of the Russian World Cup. From your experience so far, are you saying that America, the land of the free, the country that represents the free world, feels less free than when you covered Russia?
It feels less welcoming. Look, let's see how the tournament actually proceeds, but it's certainly less welcoming to what the World Cup is supposed to be. Because again, these visa issues that have been seen, it is worth stressing, these have never been seen at any modern World Cup, and that's principally because of these agreements. And there's an important context here as well. So FIFA is talking at the moment about how it it doesn't get involved in the processes of the host nations. Well, in 2023, Indonesia was hosting the Under-20 World Cup. They were talking about banning the Israeli team from entering, and FIFA promptly stripped them of hosting rights, and the tournament was moved to Argentina. They're using the kind of fairly nebulous language of current circumstances. Well, none of that has been applied here
for those countries that are facing similar restrictions or bans, and the whole question of the Iran team. Some of the players haven't been allowed entry, have they? And the reason given is that they're former members of the IRGC.
So it's the staff that have faced issues.
The staff.
Yeah, it's the staff. So the players are going to be able to play, but again, it looks like a very kind of weird compromise of.
Are they playing in Mexico or something, not America?
So you're supposed, like, this is the thing. If you're playing a game at a World Cup venue, a team has to be at the venue 24 hours beforehand, and they're supposed to train and do a press conference in the stadium. This is all the usual World Cup protocol.
Yeah.
And all of Iran's games are in the US. They haven't been allowed a base in the US. They're expected to travel quick in, quick out, which brings travel issues of its own. Which again, it just feels like this fudge where FIFA couldn't ultimately insist on the usual protocols of a tournament. The US state was obviously insistent on a certain stance with Iran, and we come up with this strange compromise that puts one team at a disadvantage.
I mean, it's unlikely that you'll get to speak to Donald Trump, but if you could, what would you say to him? Chill out, man.
Well, I suppose the interesting one is like how he even sees this tournament. Because I wrote this a year and a half ago. I mean, my book is all about the issue of sports washing, how sports washing has taken over football. I've written about it a lot for The Independent. And usually sports washing isn't applied to liberal democracies in the same way, essentially because liberal democracy governments change. So there isn't the same intent around it. Whereas obviously with autocratic states, you have long fixed rulers who are more centrally, like Qatar, say, is an absolute monarchy. And so all of its kind of international projection is related to the royal family. But obviously a difference with this Trump administration is that, I mean, already it's authoritarian facing. And the talk among human rights groups has been that it will be kind of sports washing in that sort of sense, in that the tournament would be used to project a certain ideology. I mean, the phrase as recently as March 2025 was a MAGA World Cup.
And even if it's not projecting an ideology, it projects, well, typically it tries to project everything is great here, all is well here. That's true of all countries who hold it, isn't it? It's about saying this country is all about festival and fun, despite the dark corners of every country, probably.
Yeah, and I suppose this is also a calculation FIFA always make. It happened in Qatar as well. Once the football starts, all the controversy subside into the background. I think that's broadly true. I do think in Qatar it lasted longer because I was covering all of it, like right up to kind of the controversy midway, like very early on in the tournament about kind of whether certain teams, including England and Wales, would wear the One Love armbands. But where there is a difference here, and this is where being in a liberal democracy might bring a difference, because of Trump's proximity to Infantino, the Democrats see the World Cup as a potential point of vulnerability for Trump. And we already saw last week where two blue states, New Jersey and New York, have issued subpoenas to FIFA on ticket practices. And this is where suddenly, as someone said to me in football, Infantino potentially actually goes to where usually the football is a safe space. He's potentially in an area of higher scrutiny now. So there's so much swirling around this.
And that may be the real story here. Not who wins the World Cup, but whether the tournament can still deliver on the idea that football belongs to everyone. What do you think? Are these concerns being overblown, or is this becoming a genuine challenge for the tournament? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the Political Society, and share this with someone who follows international politics or football. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.